I was like, I'm gonna push record because you are talking about being immature and the
Well, I
things.
have the worst immaturity. I just realized how immature I am. Like, I laugh at the silliest things. And
Huh?
just now I said to Sarah before we started recording, I was like, yeah, let's just bang out this episode. And I was like, bang one out. Why do I find that funny?
I don't know. I mean, because you love life and you think things are hilarious and you're internally a 13-year-old boy.
I really am. That really describes me so perfectly.
I
Yeah.
that kind of stuff makes me laugh too. I chuckle at those kind of jokes all the time,
Yeah, I'll
and
bet
it's great.
balls. Like someone says something like, "Hey, bring in the tennis ball." Yesterday at work, and he's like, "You got to look at the ball." And I was like, "You got to look at the ball." Like, what the hell? I'm the one with four kids, and I'm the child laughing at
But
work.
do you know why that is, though? I think, and now I do think this goes back to our religious upbringing, and we were never allowed to laugh at things that were like innuendo or inappropriate. And so, for some
Oh
reason, that
my
just made those
goodness.
things 80 times more funny. So,
They
I
are
think that's
so
why.
funny. My little best friend, Kat Mason, who we'll have on the show one day, um, her and I were the same, like only children, a little bit naughty. And when we were 8, we went to this Catholic private school for 13 years, both of us. And we were the naughty kids who would sit next to each other and we'd be in chapel. And we'd have these little signs. Like if we stuck up a 1, we were like, look at the priest Willie. Number 2 was like, pretend to do a fart. Number 3. So we would do this and just be laughing so much in chapel and then get sent out. We were always separated because I'd be like, number one, number one. It was just,
I
I've
love
always
it.
had that sense of humor. What is with that? Oh
That's
my
so
goodness.
good. That's
We're
all
talking
right.
about fannies and poo and bodily fluids and all the things today. We're doing another birth story.
That's right. Our
I
favorite
know.
episodes.
You.
Um,
We both didn't remember if we've told our third birth story. So I was just going to jump straight to Prairie's birth story as though like Winter and Poet don't exist. Like,
oh,
yeah,
poor
yeah, yeah.
things. Third babies.
Our third. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So welcome to the Mother Daze, everyone. I'm Teresa Palmer.
And I'm Sarah Wright Olsen. And today we are going to do our third birth stories.
Yes,
And I'm
we
giggling because
are.
it's just very funny that we have so many kids.
Oh, so
Um,
many.
we have so many kids. And Poet was actually first before Winter. So I am really excited to hear this birth story because I was not present for this one.
You and I sort of went boom, boom, boom with my kids. So I conceived Poet when Forrest was about 18 months old. And I was really excited about that closer age gap, 2 years, 4 months apart. It definitely was a pretty uneventful pregnancy. I'm lucky in that typically I don't have any major issues when I'm pregnant. However, I had the ISO immunization pregnancy this time round again. So it's a sensitivity where my body reacts to the baby and basically the baby is at risk for having some sort of anemia. I was tested a lot throughout the last few weeks, I would say, of my pregnancy, and everything seemed fine. Her levels were normal, my levels were normal. However, my iron was unbelievably low. And I'm
Oh,
just
wow.
someone who's that's what happens to me when I'm pregnant. I have low iron. My number was so bad that immediately I got the phone call and I could hear in my midwife's voice that there was something up. And she's like, just come straight in. Not a big deal. Gave me this infusion. You sit with a drip, a bag of iron, essentially. You sit for an hour and a half and
Oh,
it
wow.
was fine. I think I had kind of built it up more in my head. Like, what does this mean? Is everything going to be okay?
But when
And
your iron is low,
yeah.
don't you feel really tired? Like, were you like more fatigued than other pregnancies
Well,
or?
I had two little babes running around and I was pregnant. So I
Yeah.
think my
You're just like
normal
tired anyway.
level, yeah, of fatigue was just there and existing anyway. So I couldn't really tell the difference. I was like, yeah, I'm tired, but I don't feel like I'm on my deathbed tired. I just kind of, you know what you're like as a mum, you just sort of get on with it. And I was like,
That's
oh,
true.
well, I guess maybe that's why I've been feeling less like I want to jump out of bed with a spring in my step. But it
Yeah.
was good. It ended up being fine. I got to about 38, 39 weeks. She was getting monitored. And it seemed like I was going to go over dates, which I wasn't that surprised about because I went to 40+5 with Forrest. I went in for a couple of stretch and sweeps. It didn't really move the meter. And it was slightly uncomfortable this time round. And my midwife was saying that she was sitting higher up. So when we did the stretch and sweep, she would have me kind of hold down on my belly a little bit so she could really
Oh,
separate. Yeah, she could get the baby down lower and then she could separate the water bag from her. So that's what I think they're doing is they're coming in and doing that membrane sweep. And that felt really uncomfortable. It was the first time I've ever had a stretch and sweep where I was like, wow, that was really sharp. But again, didn't move the needle. Nothing was happening. I did all the old wives' tales, everything to try and get her going, and it just wasn't happening. So then I was 40+3. It was my son's sports day. And I was there running around in the heat. I was like, oh, this will surely do it. And I was scheduled to have a check-in that night at the hospital. So nothing happened. I was kind of having Braxton Hicks on and off, and I had a lot of prodromal labor where you think it's happening, and I'd send the message out to my birth photographer and everyone saying, oh my God, it's happening. And then it would just peter off again. And it was this stop-start pattern for really the last week once I hit 40 weeks pregnant. And I was hiking and I was trying so many different things to get this baby moving. And there just was never this consistent pattern in the labor. And so I'd get my hopes up and then I'd go back to bed and it wasn't actually happening. So when I got there to the hospital, I just had this feeling that it was a checkup, everything was fine. And I said, I just have a feeling I'm not a big one on scans. I don't want to have scans all the time, but could you just check her? Could you just check that she's okay? I'm just feeling like I need some piece of information to go home with and know that everything's fine. And that I'm just, seeing out the natural pregnancy and we'll see what happens. So the doctor came in and they did an ultrasound. And she was like, look, with isoimmunization pregnancies, we like to see the babies come out in and around their due date. We don't really like seeing them go past dates. And I was +3 days already. So she put the wand on my belly and everything looked great. And she was moving around in there. However, she started hovering over this particular spot on my placenta. And she was like, there's a little bit of calcification here. I'm not sure it's anything to worry about, but I just wanted to flag with you that I am seeing some calcification, which is just a sign of the placenta starting to get a little bit older and starting to deteriorate. That
interesting.
was it.
Okay. How did
For
you feel
me,
about
that was
that?
it. I was like, you know what? I know I just wanted to sit this thing out and see how we go, but hearing like placenta
hmm
deteriorating
You're
in
like,
one
wait, my
ear,
placenta is now geriatric.
I was like,
No,
what?
I want to get it
I was
out.
like, hang on, calcified. And then I'm hearing that like ISO babies need to be coming out earlier. I was like,
Yeah.
let's get this show on the road.
Yes.
My midwife was
hmm
like, do you want me to break your water and see what happens? Because you've been having this labor the past
Yeah.
week, it'll probably kickstart. And I knew what the risks were. If she did break my water and active labor didn't begin, then I was probably in for having to transfer out of where I was birthing, which was the midwifery center. So it would mean having to go with a doctor, go in a regular hospital setting. And I really didn't want that. I really wanted to birth in the water with this amazing midwife, Julie, and have a midwife-led birth. So we weighed up the options and just said, you know what, let's go for it. I really feel like once the waters break, I'll be able to get it moving, because it has been the last week. I keep thinking it's happening. So she broke the water, and I rang my birth team, and the birth before, my birth photographer didn't make it. So this time she was in town and ready to come. So I rang her. I was like, all right, it's happening tonight. And it actually gave me an hour to get everyone sorted and to ensure that, you know, the kids were being taken care of, that my mum was there. And we had just got straight from the kids' school to the hospital. So they were still in their sports day uniforms, and they were sitting over on the bed, and you know, Bodhi was watching Peppa Pig, and we just kind of set up the room, and we knew that it was happening. So Mark and I, my midwife was like, right, now you're on the clock. You need to get this baby going.
Yeah.
Start walking. So we hiked up this really big hill outside the hospital where I birthed, and I walked up and down, and I could feel it happening. I could just feel the contractions. I started timing them, and I was getting really excited. And then when I got back to the hospital room, like ready for it to pick up, it just petered off again. Oh, and my friends are like, what's happening? How can we help? And I felt a little bit disheartened, because I just knew that I had to do anything I could to keep the labor going and progressing. So my midwife suggested, it was around like 7 p.m. at this point, and I knew that I had to put Forrest to sleep. Mm-hmm. And she said, what about nursing? Why don't you have to nurse him to sleep anyway. Why don't you nurse and rock him and see if that does anything? So I pick him up, and I'm with him, and I'm having this really beautiful moment of knowing that these are the last moments where he's my youngest. Aww. And we were snuggling each other, and he was nursing, and I was bouncing the ball. And every time that he was drinking, he was a big guzzler, I could feel my body really reacting.
Oh, I'm sure.
Then the consistent waves started coming in, and fast, hard and fast.
Oh, wow.
I didn't go, it wasn't like this slow, gentle build up. They were really there. They were taking my breath away. I was moving, I was moaning, but I was also nursing. So I was like, oh, wow, this is
You're like,
time.
Okay, let's throw this baby off of me. Let's go.
I put him in the little newborn crib that they wheel in, the little clear crib.
Oh, you did?
And I've like rocked him to sleep. And I've got this beautiful photo that I'll put up when we post this one, of him asleep in this beautiful crib. And he's so big. And it was just like, it was such an image that is burned in my mind, because you know how they say when you give birth to your newborn, suddenly your baby, who has become this big person overnight, seems so massive.
Yeah.
I just was looking at him in that crib and thought, wow, this is his transition time. This is for him to move into this role of being the bigger guy now. So it was bittersweet, I have to say. It was quite a poignant moment with him, and he's really what helped me kick this birth off. So sure enough, fast and hard they came on, and they were every couple of minutes. And I lasted about 20 minutes on the birth pool, rocking and moving and humming and dancing, and I was really excited as well. So I was saying yes to all the waves, and I think everyone was quiet, and it was the first time I let my mum be in the room, and I could see her little face like over in the corner being like, oh, her eyes were just very wide. I was like, Mum, you need to promise me. Yeah. Is everything okay? I was like, Mum, you need to promise me that you will not have resting worried face. I need you to just like have a smile on your face, to be joyful. So every time, it was funny, I would like clock her in the room, and I'd see it, but then I'd quickly see her change into a big smile, because she remembered that I was like, I
Oh my
cannot see
God.
you looking worried at me. Okay. So she would like shift and be like, oh, you're beautiful. Even though I could just see the
Oh my
fear behind her
God.
eyes.
I love her so much.
But yeah, I had Cass in the room who works with us here at the Mother Days and your Zen Mama. She was helping with the kids, and Forrest was asleep, Bodhi was up watching iPad, Mark was kind of over with them, and it sort of shifted into this place where I said I need water. It was probably about 9 p.m. at this point, and they were quite fast, and I could really feel them wrapping around the front of my belly. There was not even a hint of back labor, thank God, hallelujah.
Yeah, no
And it was
joke.
just right up in that front, that feeling where it comes in, it contracts really strongly. So I decided that I just wanted to be in the shower. I went in the shower, and it was a very small little room, and I was so held by my sisterhood. I had Gemma, my photographer, in there. I'd
Mm,
stripped off naked. I was just in the water, loving, as you know, I love the shower in birth.
love it.
Love it. I had Cassandra, one of my best friends in the world. She was there. She was giving me sips of coconut water in between the contractions.
Mm,
I had Kat, who was also there. She's my bestie, and she was my acting doula. And so she was timing the contractions and then offering up suggestions like, do you want the flannel? Do you want some crushed ice? And it was just this room of women around me. And Mark purposely sort of held back and was with Bodhi and just sort of emotionally regulating Bodhi. And my mum was sort of popping her head in and out, but she was quite happy to be in the background and
yeah.
let this group of women my age just hold me up and cheer me on. And I got into this rhythm of really loving the hot. I cranked it up like really very hot, the water, and I had it running down my back. And at the
Oh,
peak of the contraction, I would turn my tummy in to the water and have the hot water really beat down on my tummy. And it was almost like it would pull me out of my body a little bit. And it was my coping mechanism as I got stronger and stronger. I think the reflection from a lot of my friends that day in the room seemed like I was having an out of body experience, that I was really ecstatic, that I was, yes, and I
yeah.
was excited and I was singing and dancing. And I do think that of all 4 of my births, that was the one where I just was high. I was completely
Yeah.
high on this other planet. And I pictured her little face. I kept
Oh,
visualizing her face when I was in the shower. I still remember it, and just what it would look like. And I just felt so in tune with her and so connected with her. And I kept talking to her out loud, like, yes, baby, yes, we're here. You're coming. I'm about to see your little face. And
mm,
I would say thank you to her, thank you, and stronger, because I find that when I'm laboring and there's any form of resistance to the intensity, which is so normal,
yes.
I start kind of going smaller and everything gets tighter. And then I feel the strength of the wave so much more. But when I'm welcoming stronger and bigger ones, I know that I'm progressing at a much more rapid rate. And I think that's the difference with my first birth, was that everything was like, oh, just manage the one at the time. And oh God, that was so hard. Okay, manage the next one. Whereas this one, I was like, bring it on, bring it bigger, stronger. Yes, this is amazing. And when they got so powerful that it felt like I was coming out of my body, I would just vocalize loudly and sing. I had Florence and the Machine on, cranked. We were all sort of singing to the songs, and there was
Oh,
just like this amazing vibe in the air. And I then felt it shift. I felt it shift. I didn't have an awareness of the time, but I knew it hadn't been that long, and I could tell by how fast it was getting to the point where I was really having to draw on every last morsel of strength, I knew that I had to be close to transition. So as I was roaring and doing my twist of my belly into the water, I started feeling a real pressure that they talk about, just a heaviness in your butt, like you're going to do a big poo. As you know, we talk about poo a lot on this podcast, and it just felt like, oh, there was a heavy weight at the bottom. And I got really excited about that. And Julie, my midwife, was like, I think it's time for you to get in the birth pool. And we were all celebrating this because we knew what it meant. So I transitioned into the birth pool, and the warm water felt amazing. And I love the floating feeling in water. It really takes the pressure off all the areas. And luckily I didn't have any back labor at all this time. But I also feel a bit like a slippery seal in the birth tub. Like I can't quite find my rhythm with my positioning when I first get in there. I have to find out, all right, is it feeling better on my hands and my knees? Should I be lying back and like wiggling my hips, or do I want to just sit cross-legged? And I kind of tried a mixture of things. And it got to the point where I knew I had to be about 9 centimeters because they were rolling together one after the other, and it was louder and stronger, and everything had felt so positive up until this point. And I was like, yes, yes. And then I had about 5 in a row, and I could feel my mindset like shift. And I was like, ooh, something feels like I just know I should be pushing now. And I looked at my midwife and I was like, I am having the feelings and the sensations of a person who's transitioning into pushing, but I'm not pushing yet for some reason. And she's not quite there yet. I just feel like there's something going on. And she was like, well, you understand, you're in your body. Let me get you out and let's just check you and see what's going on. So, Mark at this point is like pulling me out. My friend Claire's arrived, and I've got all these beautiful women around me. And there's a really funny selfie that I am going to post when this story comes out of Kat Mason, my bestie, and Claire being like, woo, they're taking a selfie with me in the background, sitting on the toilet with a flannel over my face, dying in the background. And they're like, woohoo, in this photo. And it's really funny because their spirits really kept me going, because I got into that toilet and I was like, oh God, the pressure is so much. What's going on?
Yeah.
The midwife went up and she was like, you've got a cervical lip. This is what you're feeling. You have a cervical lip. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know what this is. Sarah had one of those. I remember. And I said, you've got to hold back my cervix and I've got to just push the baby's head past the cervix. My friend Sarah did this. And she was like, okay, great. So you know what I need to do? I'm just going to keep my hands up there. You got to give me the biggest pushes you've ever done, and I'm going to hold your cervix back. Yeah, it was so hard, as you know, but you did it for a lot longer than I did. You did it for 4 hours. I only had to do a few pushes like this. So she held my cervical lip back, which is essentially your cervix gets fatigued. You get to about 9.5 centimeters or 9 centimeters, and you can't dilate that further centimeter or half a centimeter because your cervix swells. So the only way to get past that is to have someone, your midwife, go up and really push that swollen bit, the lip of the cervix, back so that the baby's head can pass. So that's what happens. It's pretty intense, as Sarah knows. But I just pushed with all of me as she held it back. And I probably did that 3 times. And I could just feel her just slip down right into the place she needed to be. And I quickly was like, oh, she's here. So I waddled, was half carried back into the birth tub from the toilet because I really love birthing in water. And I just moved into my hands and knees position, which is my favorite position to birth in. Rocked my hips and then started alternating between my 2 favorite breathing techniques during pushing, which helps prevent tearing. So it's the panting, the
Uh-huh.
And then the horse lips, so I went between those two to breathe the baby out. And Sarah always laughs because she was like, no matter how much she tried, she could never breathe her 11-pound and 10-pound babies out of her vagina. Mine were a little bit smaller than yours, Sarah, but yes, you're a grunter and a groaner, and you get in there and you're like an animal. And I sort of do something different because it's just the way it works for me is I move into this like breathing thing. I go
Oh,
like deep
so great.
meditative breathing. And then it was helping. I could feel that the burning was starting to happen, which was exciting because I knew her head was about to pop through. So that's when I know, all right, slow this process down. Do not push this baby out fast because I have the tendency to tear. I tore in my first birth. I didn't obviously with Forrest, but Forrest's birth was such an amazing reminder just to slow that part down. So
Mm.
I'm really present when I push because I can feel everything and I can just feel what's happening in my body. So I like to put the hand on the baby's head to help bring the head out. But that's what I did. I put my hand down there. I was breathing. I could feel her hair and I kept telling everyone, oh my gosh, she's got a lot of hair, which is so funny because now she doesn't have a lot of hair at all. But at the time she had so much hair. And I just sort of eased her out with a few little grunts, a few little pushes, as well as the breathing. And she slipped right out. And I pull back and I bring her on my chest and I can't get her up to kiss her. She sort of like stops at my boobs and I have the shortest umbilical cord
Oh my
ever.
gosh.
It's so short. I cannot even get her up properly on me because it's
That's
just so short.
crazy.
It was crazy. I was like, what is
That's
going
why in
on?
that photo with her, you're like kind of like hunched over.
Hunched over because I couldn't get down
Yes.
to I couldn't get down to I was
Oh
like,
my
oh my gosh, this lead is
gosh.
so short. And
That's
she came
crazy.
out and she was my first girl. And I checked again to make sure she was a girl because we found out
Like,
she was a
let
girl.
me see
I was like,
that
oh my
vulva.
gosh, it's a baby vagina and it's so swollen and it's so cute. And I've got
Oh,
a girl and I've got this amazing, it's like for me, my iconic birthing photo.
it's the best
Um,
photo ever. You
I just
look,
love it.
because that
I,
was your ecstatic birth experience, and and
yeah.
that photo really captures it. Like, I know you're going to put that photo up with this post, but
Yes.
you just look so
So
happy.
happy.
Yeah,
It
but
was
like ecstatic, you know?
so like I was ecstatic. I was high. I'd had this amazing birth. Like
Yeah.
we'd gotten through the cervical lip and I felt empowered because I had seen you experience that. So I knew I could dip into my little toolbox. Like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
I saw this and I saw what has to happen and I know that I can get through this. And it was really informative. And I needed that in the moment. I didn't feel afraid. I just was like, right, this is just another step that I need to take
Yeah.
in order to get her out. And it helped combat the little feelings of fear that I could feel arising. So
Hmm.
it was just, she came out and she was just so perfect and plump. And I had a daughter and I'd always dreamt of having a daughter. And it was
Oh,
just one of these magical moments. And Mark, the shot that Gemma got was where Mark's kissing me, and I'm just like, oh, the most elated look on my face. And she was just beautiful and perfect. And I felt amazing afterwards. My placenta, my second stage, came out um, pretty quickly, actually, about 30 minutes after birth. Julie got me out of the water and I sat on the bed and all my friends sat with me. I've got this beautiful photo of all of us together in the birth room and we're all hugging each other and we're listening to music. And I think she came out to a Sigur Rós song.
oh,
And it was just this
so cute.
wonderful experience. And it was fascinating though, because when my placenta came out, and this happened again in Prairie's birth, which is really odd. But when my placenta came out, I could see the calcification. I could
Wow.
see the parts of the placenta that had essentially shut down. And for me, it was quite validating because even though there was probably still a 30% part of me that was like, oh, I'm a bit wobbly about making this choice. Maybe I should just wait a
Yeah.
few days. In that moment, it felt like I totally had dropped into my instinct, and it was the
Yeah.
right way to birth her. It was right to have that natural induction of having my water broken and bringing her on at that time. And ISO immunization babies and those pregnancies, that it's very specific, and we don't know tons about them, especially in Adelaide. There aren't many of us who experience births with babies who are sensitized. So I just was very happy that that was the choice I made, and I just loved it. It was such an amazing birth. It was so fun, wild, crazy, intense, had moments where of fear, but I just, yeah, what a dream.
Such a dream. I mean, that is a dream birth. I wonder if there's any sort of connection between getting your water broken and having a cervical lip swell.
I wonder, because your water was broken as well.
Yeah, I think my water has been broken almost every time.
Yeah.
Because I remember that it was broken with um Esme towards the end, and it was
Hmm.
definitely broken with Winter. And yeah, my midwife had to break my water with Wyatt too. It was like she had to break it, and then the water didn't, like, that didn't happen, and then it finally happened. But with my last birth, it was the same thing where he said, "Wow, your bag of water is so strong." Because it wasn't breaking. But yeah, I
Oh
wonder
my
if there's any
goodness.
sort of connection with that.
I wonder, why don't we look into it?
I know we will. Definitely. Gosh, that was such an amazing.
I know that there is a consensus that if you have a lip in your first birth, there's a higher rate of people having lips in their second and third and subsequent births. I know that, but I don't know why. I'd like to understand the
Yeah.
why of that, because I then didn't have one with Prairie, but I
Yeah.
kept, it was like when I tell that story, I kept thinking the lip was coming. I would be at transition being like, the lip, the lip. And everyone's like, you might not have a lip. And I was like, I probably have a lip. And then like I didn't have a lip, and I got out of the water to like check for the lip, but that was not there. It was non-existent. But
But
because I
how,
had read that you can have them a subsequent
yeah,
time, and that it's quite, common to have that happen, I was like, oh my God, this is definitely happening to me.
how
Yeah.
crazy though is that feeling when it feels like you need to push? Because that's happened to me every time, which is why I
Yes.
think I always say, like, when I get to the pushing part, that's not the fun part for me
The
because
relief. Yeah.
yeah, it's not, I don't feel like it doesn't feel good until the baby's like slipping on out, but like the
Yeah.
the pushing part is just feels like so intense to me because when I
Yeah.
get there, my body is like having all these feelings of like wanting to push, 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 and all the energy goes down, but then there's no progression because it's like pushing against this
The
cervical lip.
cervix that's
So,
swelling.
and then it's like I'm pushing against like a hand up there pulling it back and the cervical lip. So then it's like, you're pushing through that, which is really intense too. And then once it's past that point, then it's like the baby just kind of comes out, eventually. So,
Yes.
um,
Once you get it past the lip, once you can push past the lip, then it's like, all right, now I feel. I mean, do you ever feel productive once the lip's gone? Then you're like, all right, now I know that the ring of fire is coming and I know what to do here, and or not really.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Like now, yeah, the Ring of Fire is not even a thing for me because I've done so much work to try to get the baby past the lip
Hmm.
that once the baby's like coming down to the Ring of Fire and all that, it's just I feel like everything else has gone numb at that point.
Yeah.
So, um, so then yeah, that's a lot of work.
So
Um,
that was the third birth story, my birth story with poet Lake Palmer. And now we get to hear all about Winter's story. I can't wait to hear
Winter.
this. Little Winty.
Yes, you've heard this once before. But we will go through this birth story now of Winter, which is I was sitting here listening to your birth story with Poet, and it was so beautiful. And I'm hearing you talking about all the women in the room and like all the people, the support that you had. Everybody's sitting there afterwards, and like you guys are listening to music, and it's so beautiful. And I am thinking about all of the women who've been birthing over the last 2 years and how that's just a very different story.
Absolutely.
Because with the pandemic, like birth really changed. And unless you had a home birth,
Hmm.
then your birth was at a hospital and it was probably only you and your partner, maybe not even you and your
And
partner.
sometimes not even. Yeah,
I
my
know. And
girlfriend
then,
birthed without her. Well, she was in labor without her partner until he was allowed in from 7 centimeters. So
yeah.
she had to do all that laboring on her own, and he could come in at the very end.
Oh, that is crazy. Yeah, I mean, so the last birth story of mine that you guys heard was the birth story that I had with Esme, and it was like my dream birth, right? And it was the birth that I really, really needed because I had lost my dad, and it was just like this beautiful cleansing for me and just such an unbelievable experience. And so then I'm pregnant with Winter, and it's about, March 2020, everything in the world shuts down. And I'm about to be like, 4 months along or something with being pregnant with Winter. And everything really changes throughout the pregnancy. Like now my doctor visits, it's just me. I'm going in, I'm scared. I have a mask, I have goggles. I have
Sarah has a hazmat suit
I have
because
a
she was one
hazmat
of
suit.
those.
I was one of those. I was wearing a face shield. I was wearing goggles, and everybody looked at me like, are those swimming goggles? And I was like, yes, I'm keeping the particles out of my eyes. Did I walk around with swimming goggles on? Yes, I did. Sometimes.
Oh
um,
my God.
Actually, they were my kids' swimming goggles, so they were so small and they were so tight on my face. That I ended up ordering like like a woodworker's glasses that you would put on, and they were like, to keep the wood shavings out of your eyes.
Sarah
Oh my
took the
God.
pandemic so seriously, which was
Really
wonderful, but she
seriously.
really didn't see anyone. And if she did, she was
No,
like in a bubble, just like in
I was.
plastic with shields. We would like wave from afar. I don't know.
That's
Did we
right.
even see each other? I'm not sure. I don't think I was even in the
No.
country though.
You weren't. I didn't see anybody for like such a long time. It was crazy. Like crazy, crazy amount of time. People I even like I remember posting something about I'm finally seeing my mom for the first time. My baby was like 5 months old or something, and she was meeting my mom for the first time, and everybody was like, "Wait, what? Like you haven't seen your mom since the pandemic started?" I'm like, "No, she works in a dental
Your house
office."
was like Fort Knox. It's like
Yeah,
you
our
just like
house was
locked it down.
so locked down. Anyway, so yeah, so me and my goggles, and my my gloves, and everything that I would do to go to the doctor's office, and I was even afraid to be in an elevator. So I walked the 5 flights of stairs every time that I went to my doctor's office. And then I would get to the top and they would be like, "Okay, can we take your blood pressure?" And I'd be like, "No, you gotta wait a minute." And I'd be like, don't take my blood pressure yet." I just walked up the 5 flights of stairs and they were like, "Look, lady, if you just tell people downstairs that you don't want to be in an elevator with them, they're going to wait for you because you're very pregnant." I was like, "Okay." So anyway, I end up having a very wonderful pregnancy, but also a very like isolating pregnancy. This was not one where I'm hanging out with people. And for anybody who's had a baby in the last 2 years, you totally know what I'm talking about. So Winter was due in September of 2020. And I we were in Idaho. We drove to Idaho with our Airstream and like, we camped along the way and then we came back. And it was about end of July, I think, that we came back, beginning of August. And I just had it in my mind that she was going to come early. I was like, she's the third baby, so unpredictable. But she's big. They're telling me she's huge, like my other two. So who knows? Is she going to be 12 pounds? Is she going to be 10 pounds? Like, I have no idea. And I didn't feel like she was bigger than Esme. Esme was an 11-pound baby, and I felt like she was smaller because I didn't it was a much easier pregnancy on my body. I felt much like, like a much more of a relief in my body. It didn't feel like super achy everywhere like I did with Esme. So I just instinctively felt like she was a little bit smaller, but I was like, she's definitely gonna come early. My son's birthday, or no, my daughter's birthday is August 9th. That's Esme's. And then Wyatt's is August 16th. So I was like, how fun would it be if hers was like the following weekend? So I kind of set myself up in this thing where I was like, I kept thinking, okay, she's gonna come early. What if it's exactly 7 days after Wyatt's birthday? And then she didn't come. And it was like, I couldn't even remember when my due date was. I think my due date was like right at the beginning of September. It was like September 6th or something. And I was like, gosh, I'm like really trying to get her to come here in mid-August. And I was like, maybe she is gonna come closer to her due date. But I started having that prodromal labor like I always
Mhm.
do. And I was like, okay, well, she's in the same position everybody else has been in inside of my uterus. I think Wyatt very quickly molded my uterus into one specific, it's like one room in there and it's shaped a certain way. And whatever new baby's going to come in there, they're going to absolutely fit right into that mold. And we're going to have the same experience. Prodromal labor, kind of off to the right. We're going to have to do a whole lot of hip shaking and get baby to come down the right way. So I'm getting close to my due date and I go to see my amazing OBGYN, Dr. Goldberg, who he just recently died. So it's crazy going through this birth story and thinking about the lead up to this because I just love him so much. He's such an unbelievable human being, and OBGYN, and I just I know that there's many, many, many women, including myself, who love, adore, and will miss him so much. And Teresa, you knew him so well too.
I did. He was
Yeah.
so beautiful and such an advocate for the birthing mother. Like, really helped us feel empowered and absolutely respected all of our ways in which we wanted to birth. And I know Sarah will talk more about that, but really honored the idea that she wanted to sort of have the feeling of being at home, but being at the hospital.
Oh,
And
yeah. I mean, I would
yeah.
try to convince him over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to text you and then you're going to show up at my house, right? And he'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. And I'd be like, cool.
He
So
was
what
so
happens if
funny.
I'm in the bathtub and I'm like, oh, baby's already coming out. Can you come over? He's like, no, that's not going to happen. And I was like, really wanting to like make him do a home birth so bad because I just feel I felt so safe with him
Yeah.
because he really understood the way that my body works and how I birth, and really understood that cervical lip, and that my first baby had gotten the sticky shoulders, and he pulled, helped me push out an 11-pound baby. And so I just felt like
And his butt was there for you to
and
grab
his
if you
butt was
needed
there for me to
it.
grab. Oh my God, that was mortifying. When he told me the next day that I had grabbed his ass during
One of the
labor.
contractions.
Yeah. My God, I was so mortified. He's like, so, you know what happened? Anyway,
Oh.
mortifying. That was during Esme's birth. So anyway, So he had I had his number, and he would text me and say, "Okay, I'm going to go for a bike ride this weekend. Let me know if you're feeling anything, because I'll be off the grid for like a couple of hours." And so I was always like, "Okay, no, I'm totally fine. I feel great." And then, I would text him on Friday night, and I'd be like, "Okay, just so you know, I'm starting to feel some things like the, prodromal labor. I'll text you if this progresses, but this is how far apart it is now." And then he wrote me back and was like, "Okay, great." And then he'd check in with me on Saturday morning. He'd be like, "Going for my bike ride." And I'd be like, "Ugh, go on your bike ride. It's fine. Everything went away." And so we got into this rhythm where, I show up at his office like a few days before my labor was starting. And I'm like, "So how long are you going to let me go?" Like, my due date has come and gone. It's, I think at this point I was maybe 5 days past my due date. And I was like, how long will you allow this to go? Like, are you going to put your foot down at some point? Because we never really had that conversation because my babies come like right around the due date, right? And so he was like, "Well, this Sunday was going to be my like 14 days, right?" And so he was like, "Well, we get closer to that and we can start working in some like natural inductions." And I was like, "Okay, great. All right. So I just have to try to go into labor before Sunday." Got it. So, my body does the same thing where it keeps feeling like I'm going to labor every day leading up to it. And then we finally get to, I'm already starting to laugh just because this birth is just hysterical. Anyway, we get to the night before, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. I feel like I'm starting to feel some things." I had been eating 4 dates every like few hours. I was drinking the raspberry tea. I was doing squats. I was telling Eric we had to have sex. This was also definitely the birth that I was talking about where my hormones were crazy. So I was like, crazy, 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 crazy. So we were definitely taking advantage of all of that leading up to it. And I was like, "Well, gotta keep doing it because, it's going to put me into labor." Your apparently sperm actually helps your cervix and your lining and everything to ripen. Exactly. So I was like, "All right, this is it.
Let's
Game
ripen
on."
this up.
That's right. And so anyway, so we get to 10 days past my due date. I go in and I do a little test, and they're checking the baby's heart rate and everything, and they have to do this test like every single day. The stress test, yeah. And he's like, "Oh, do you feel anything?" And I was like, "Not really. Why?" And he was like, "Well, we have some contractions happening." And I was like, "Seriously? I've been feeling contractions for like 2 weeks." And I was like,
And
"I feel nothing.
Can't feel any.
And I can't feel anything." I was like, "What do you mean we have contractions happening?" And he was like, "Well, they're actually pretty consistent here." And he was like, "This is good. This feels good." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "So am I going to feel it soon or like what?" And so anyway, I left. I went home. I didn't feel much, but then there was like little hummings of something. I was like, "Okay, maybe I do feel something happening." That kind of tightening in the belly and then it going away and tightening in the belly and going away. And so we get to that evening and I'm kind of uncomfortable, but I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead and go to bed.
Sorry, guys. I just had to interrupt Sarah because I could hear my daughter playing Mummies and Daddies in the same room that I'm in. And I was like, "Wait, what's happened?" Like, I have a nanny upstairs, Maisie, but I also have my mum. And so I ran up. I had to interrupt Sarah. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm hearing Mummies and Daddies right now." Like, what's going on? Ran up there, saw that Maisie's putting the baby to sleep in the other room. And my mum is passed out, fast asleep on the couch with her head tilted back, snoring upstairs. And I just ran up and woke her up.
Gosh.
I was like, "Mum, I'm trying to do my podcast." And she's playing Mummies and Babies, like right here. Anyway,
that's hilarious. Oopsies.
Yeah, she was like, "Oh, sorry." Oh. Anyway. was like, I'm in the middle of
Love
a
it.
really amazing birth story. Come
You're
on.
so cute. All right, so I go to bed, and I'm super uncomfortable that night, and I'm in and out of like this sleep state, and it's such a weird feeling because I'm really tired, but I keep sort of like waking up in this dreamy place and thinking, okay, I feel like maybe I'm in labor, and then I go back to sleep, and then I wake up and I'm like, ugh, I feel horrible. What is that? And then I go back to sleep, and it was this really strange sleep state where I was
Trippy.
just in and out, in and out, in and out throughout the night. And then 5 a.m. ish rolls around, and I'm like, go to the bathroom, and I'm kind of, it's like cold in the house. And so my husband wakes up, and he's like, oh, is everything okay? And I was like, I think I'm in labor. Now I'm going to pause it and say this. Eric was supposed to start work on NCIS LA 2 weeks prior, which was right at
That's
my due
right.
date. Yeah. And they actually wrote him out of the first episode because of my due date. And the due date came and went, and we still hadn't had the baby. And so we had all this wonderful time. I know. And we had all this wonderful time together to, do what we did. And then we end up he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to go back to work. And I was like, oh my gosh, is it gonna be like the day he has to go back is the day that I go into labor?
No.
Well, guess what, everybody? It was. It's my day, 10, 11 to 11 days post my due date is the day that I wake up in the morning, and he has to be at work, and he has to be at work at like 8 a.m. And it's 5 a.m. He has to be working like 7. I don't know. It's super early. Anyway, it's 5. And I was like, Eric, I'm in labor. And he was like, oh my gosh. And there's nothing you can do. Like, it's his first day going back to set. They've already pushed his episode, like pushed his stuff, taken him out of stuff, like tried to make this work to where he would be able to be off. And I'm like, he's like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, you got to go to work.
What?
I was like,
love that you said that.
Yeah. I was like, let's just sit here together for a minute, and let me just think, because I was like, I could really feel it. I was really in labor at this point. I was like, whoa. And he was sitting behind me, and I was like, put your hands in my belly. And so he put his hands in my belly, and it was just like that very beginning of labor. It was like so wonderful. I think that was maybe the most beautiful part of this labor, was that beginning part, sitting in bed with him at like 5 a.m, and the sun's coming up. Esme's sleeping in the bed. Wyatt's still asleep in his bed. And I'm feeling these contractions, and I'm sitting here with him. And then he has to get up and start getting ready for work. And so I was like, you just got to do it. You got to go to work. Here's what's going to happen. You go to work. The hospital is actually closer to your work than it is to our house. So I'll call you and tell you I'm heading to the hospital. And then you can tell work, okay, I need to meet her at the hospital. Yeah. And so, and we have Sonia, who's our amazing nanny, and she's also going to be my doula, because this is COVID, and they only started letting the husbands come back like a few weeks prior, and one other person can come, one other like a doula. Only a doula. You couldn't have like 2 people with you, but you could have a doula, and you could have your husband at Cedars, or your partner. So then I was like, okay, Sonia will take me. I'll call one of my girlfriends who I trust that won't give my kids COVID, to come over and watch my kids, and then we'll race to the hospital, and then you can meet me there, and we'll have the baby. And so this is not ideal, right? Like, I would love for Eric just to be there with me. It's wild. But I'm like, go to work. I got this. We're going to be fine. I'm going to go in the bathroom. I'm going to do a bath and shower and I'm going to labor. I'm going to do my beautiful things. But it's the morning. This isn't the night like I had before that was so romantic with the moonlight and the bathtub. It's the morning. So the kids are up and the kids are like, what's up? And it's their first day of school. So, and they're doing Zoom school. So like Wyatt's on his Zoom school. Esme's getting ready for hers. And it's like a little frantic, but I'm in labor. So I'm like going through the motions of all my labor, but then I'm also answering like how to log on to the iPad questions and let me get Wyatt set up with his headphones. I got to get Esme set up with hers. And so I'm like, Sonia, I need to walk away for a minute. And I like go into the bathroom and I'm holding on to the bathroom sink. And all of a sudden a jackhammer starts. And I was like, what the actual fuck is happening right now? What is happening? And then I remembered that we were in the middle of building a gate in the front of our house. And they just happened to come to break all the concrete up that morning. And so there's a jackhammer going on outside the house. The dogs are going crazy in the backyard because there's men working in the front of the house jackhammering. So the dogs are barking, jackhammer's going, kids are jumping onto their Zoom school. I'm in the bathroom.
Husband's at work.
Her husband's leaving for work. He's like heading out the door for his very first day back on his show. And I'm in the back texting my girlfriend, Anna, and I'm like, can you leave your 3 kids and come over to take care of my kids right now, or your 2 kids and come take care of my kids? And she's like, absolutely. What time should I be there? And I was like, it feels like I'm kind of in the beginnings part, but maybe like my contractions are like maybe 4 minutes apart. She's like, that's not the beginning. And I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, it feels intense, but I think it's going to be a little while. So 15 minutes later, she's sitting on my steps outside my house. I was like telling her to wait till I called her, and she's sitting outside.
That's right.
She was like so worried that I was going to have the baby in my bathroom by myself. And I was like, I'm not, don't worry. And so I'm in the back laboring and it starts to feel really big. And Esme runs in and she's like, let me help you, mommy. And she's putting her hands on me. And then I'm like kind of gathering some of my things up and I have my go bag ready to go. And, but I'm like, this is like just started. Like it's 2 hours to go. And then the dogs start barking again. And you guys, if you've heard any of my birth stories, you know that sound is like putting nails in my body. Like loud sounds kill me. It is so hard. I have auditory issues. Like I can't handle the loud noises. So the dogs start barking again. The jackhammer's going. And we like don't have like there's a bunch of furniture that's missing from our living room because we were in the process of like remodeling and stuff like that. So I walk out into the living room and I was like, oh, I grab the wall and I start moaning a little bit. And then Esme comes up behind me and she's trying to help by pressing on my back. And Wyatt's in first period at his school. So he's sitting here watching me, but he's got his headphones on and he's like trying to pay attention to Zoom school. And my friend Anna comes in and she's texting the doctor because we have the same doctor.
Yeah.
And she goes, Goldberg wants to know like how far apart is everything, so I'm gonna start timing you. And I was like, it's fine. I'm probably gonna be like not gonna leave for the hospital for another hour or so. And she was like, Sarah, I'm timing your contractions, and they're like 2.5, 3 minutes apart. And I was like, oh, that's kind of close together. Okay. And then and it felt intense, right? But I was like, there's just so much going on.
And the distraction of everything.
Distracted and a little irritated because it was so loud. The jackhammer is still going, you guys. Just picture it right there in your brain. And Wyatt's like starting to sing this song from school and do these like jumping jacks. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't concentrate. Like, let me go light a candle and turn on some meditation music. None of that is happening. I can't even shut the door in my bathroom.
Like, get me to the hospital. I want to go to the hospital right now.
I know. And then she was like, I think you need to leave. And I was like, okay. Good idea. I think I am going to leave. And I was like, yeah, maybe once I get to the hospital, it'll be nice. Because I remember my room was really big and I was able to like have nice music and like Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Let me go do that because I needed like more of a relaxed state, forgetting that it's COVID and things are going to be very different when I get to the hospital. So, we jump into my car. Anna's there, thank God. She's taking care of my kids. And I text Eric, and I have this great picture that I'll put up for this episode. I have a picture of myself just kind of like bent over in the middle of like my captain's chairs in the back of my car, and Sonia's driving because I can't sit down when I was in labor. Like it felt so intense to sit, so I needed to be on all fours. So I'm like holding on to the chair, and I'm like perched into the middle of my car, and she takes off, and I just start texting people. I even did a little video, and I was like, I'm in labor, here I
You've
go,
got to
and I'm
put
like
it up. You've
I
got to
will.
put that up.
It's
I
so
love it.
dumb because I'm just whispering, and I was like a little embarrassed to make the video, so I'm like, I'm in labor, and oh my gosh, this is happening right now, and then I was like, oh, and then I have a contraction, and then we get so the hospital. We drive to the hospital, and the whole time I'm very aware that I'm uncomfortable, and I'm texting Eric, and he's like, "Okay, don't worry, I'll meet you there. I'm almost done with the shot." And
Imagine him at
and
work as well.
I know,
Like,
oh
how
my
do you even
gosh,
focus on what you're
right? It must have
doing?
been so stressful. So we're getting close to the hospital. I'm texting Eric. I'm telling Eric, okay, we're almost there. We're almost to the hospital. And Sonya's driving, and we're both kind of trying to figure out where to go because Cedars is a huge place, right? So it's like I know that we're supposed to go to this certain like parking garage, and then we can park there, and then we get our COVID test as we go in from there. This is what like I found on the Cedars website. So,
And it's protocol. You have to have a test
oh yeah,
to
you
be
have to
able to
get
enter
tested
the
on the way in.
hospital.
Yeah. So for me, I'm not tested on the way in. My temperature is just checked. But and Sonia's temperature is checked, but I think she also had to have a test on the way in. But then they're gonna test me in the room once I get up there,
Oh
right?
my goodness.
So we can't find where to go, and then we missed the turn in to the parking garage. And this is awful because then we have to go all the way around the whole hospital grounds again. And I'm fully in, I don't even know where I'm at, technically in labor, but it feels really, really intense. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I know that I'm like, just do a U-turn. I'm like, it's okay.
Oh
And
my
poor
God, drive on the other
Sonia.
side of the road. It doesn't
I'm like,
matter.
Sonia, do you think you could do a U-turn? I don't remember if we did a U-turn. I don't remember if we went all the way back around. I do not remember, but both of us were like, oh my gosh, we can't find where to go. And then we found it, and we were like, okay, that's where we go. So we go into the parking garage, and we're trying to find a place to park, and the parking lot is so full on
It's
this level that
full.
we're supposed to be. So we have to park all the way in the back corner of the parking garage. And then I'm going to walk up. And of course, she was like, I'll drop you off. And I'm like, no, I'm going with you. And so we get out of the car. We start walking up. Remember, guys, I'm the person who wears the goggles and the face shield and mask. So I'm really freaked out to be inside of any
She's
place
a
because I
woman in a
haven't
bubble.
been. I've been in a bubble. Meanwhile, I'm texting my doctor, and I'm like, I'm in the building, and he's like, so am I. I'm up here
Oh,
on the
good.
floor. You're good. Don't worry. And I was
Oh,
like,
good.
okay. So I go in, they check my temperature. I'm having big moaning. They're like, get this girl up to labor and delivery. They're like, what is happening? And we get to the elevator, and I look at Sonia, and she's just like the most calming, comforting
She
presence, and
is.
definitely one of my best friends in the whole world. So I'm looking at her like, am I gonna have the baby in the elevator? And she's like, you're fine, everything's fine. So we get up to the thing, and I get to the front desk, and I'm like, this is my name. Dr. Goldberg is my doctor. And I remembered last time that we were at this hospital, they like swept us in so quickly, put us into this like big, massive, beautiful room. They saw my husband, and they were like, oh, who's he? Okay, yeah, let's take him this way. And it was just like everything was very welcoming, but I was like not with Eric this time. And so I was like, okay, where can you guys put me? Last time I was in this amazing room, blah blah blah. And they were like, there are no rooms. available right now. It is so packed. They were like, I think one is being cleaned right now, and it's just just opening up. And I was like,
And
are
like
you
for you,
kidding
clean
me
freak as
right now?
well.
Oh,
The
I know.
idea that you're like, ew, it's been
They're
cleaned in
cleaning
the
it.
toilet. Yeah.
Okay. Plus, like you have to, I found this out after the fact, but like the patients that have COVID have one specific nurse that takes care of them the whole time. And then they're on a specific area of the floor. And so they have to be away from everybody else. So the rooms are like, it's very complicated right now. And so finally they get me in the hallway and we start to go left. And then they were like, oh no, wait, it's right. And then we start going down the hall to basically what looks like a broom closet. And honestly, technically, it kind of is one because it's the tiniest room. There are zero windows. It's the room where they keep all the stock stuff. So like
Oh my
you
God. The
open the
extra beds.
door. Yeah, it's a hospital room, but you open the door in the back and it's where all the stuff, it's like the toilet paper, all the brooms, like everything is back there. So I was just like, wait, where are we? And then Goldberg comes in, which is my doctor, and he's like, "Whoa, where is she? What's going on?" And the nurses were like, "Shh, shh, shh," because of course he's like, I don't want my patient in this room, like she's very loud, like she's gonna be much happier somewhere bigger." And he was like, "Do you want to birth in here?" And I was like, I'll birth if the baby's coming now. I'll birth wherever, but I would prefer to be somewhere else." And I'm like, "Don't unpack the stuff yet, Sonia. Like we're gonna move." And they're like, Goldberg, hush, hush. They're like, there is no other room. This is the only option. So she's got to do it here. And he's like, oh. And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. Let's just do it. I'm gonna be fine. So no windows, tiny room. I'm seeing that there's a bathroom. The bathtub shower area looks like it's for a child. It's like child. Everything is very small. And so the nurse comes in she's like, I got to do the COVID test on you. And I'm like, okay. And it's September at this point, right? So this is September 2020. So this is when they're still sticking the thing so far up into your brain because they're
Mm,
like thinking that that's the only place to gather all the mucus.
the COVID.
And yes, exactly. So, the woman comes to like do the COVID test, and I'm like, wait, don't put it up my nose yet. And I have this huge contraction, and then I was like, okay, put it up my nose. And she puts it up my nose, and it is insane. And I'm like coming up off the bed. It's so like it hurts so much to me.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then
It's
she
just
has to go in
unnecessary.
unnecessary, but I can't even wait to tell you when I get these results, by the way. So then she does the other side, and it's so excruciating. And then I'm like, okay, that we can
Never
get out of here
again.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're done. And Eric's not here yet. But I look at Sonia and I'm like, Eric, how close is he? And she's like, he's on his way. And I was like, okay. And so they check me, and I'm around 6, 7 centimeters. So I'm just starting to get into transition. And I was like,
Oh my
ah.
gosh.
And I was like, okay. And Goldberg goes, okay, I have to go somewhere. I'll be back. You have a little bit of time, right? So I'm going to come back in exactly 1 hour. And he was like, get in the shower, whatever sounds good to you, go ahead and do that. He's like, I'm coming back at this time. And I was like, okay, great. Sounds good. Um, and so I get into the shower. It's the smallest shower ever. And I'm holding onto the shower rod inside, and I'm trying to hang from it because it's like everything feels really like, I don't know, tight in my body. So I wanted to stretch. And then in rushes Eric. Okay, so he's there, and I'm like, woohoo! So excited to see him. Um, and then the water in the shower all of a sudden got kind of hot, and I started getting really hot. And I was like, okay, turn that off. And then I was instantly overheated. And anyone that touched me, their body was too hot. I needed like towels that were cold. I was like, boy, did I really screw the pooch on this one. Like that shower was so hot. I was only in there for like 2 seconds, and now I'm like blazing. And I'm kind of walking around the room, just trying to like fan myself, but in between these really big contractions. And then it just started to feel like I couldn't have my legs together, standing upright. I started walking around with my legs really far apart. Like I was gonna try to do the splits. But I was like walking with them so open, and I have no idea why, but it really was excruciating when my legs were closer together. And so I'm naked, except I have on a bra. And I have this thing around my belly that's checking the baby's heart rate, and the baby's heart rate is amazing. It's totally fine. I keep having this feeling like I need to go poo. Sorry, everyone. Um, and so I'm holding on to Eric, and he has all this adrenaline from running from work, right? So he's like
Oh, he's
raced over.
sweaty.
His body is like a furnace. And so I keep saying in between the contractions, like, you're so hot. You're so hot.
He's
Like,
like,
I
thank you.
can't touch your
Wow.
body. And I was just like, oh, it's like too much, you know? And I wanted to hold on to him so bad, but I was just blazing. And then, so then at this point, things started to feel really intense, and I was sweating so bad. Like the sweat was dripping off my face, and I was wearing a mask, and the mask was getting wet. And
Oh,
I just ripped the mask off my face. Everyone else in the room had a mask on,
are you
but
supposed to wear a
yeah,
mask
you
as a
had to wear a mask.
what? You're supposed to wear a
Yes.
mask as a laboring woman?
Yes, yes, yes. You had to wear a
I'm
mask.
dying for you right now.
But then I took it off, and it was because it was soaked, and no one said anything to me about it, thank goodness. But I took it off and was like, I can't have that on my face. Um, and I started holding onto the bed, and I was like, oh, I just feel like I have to go poop. And then I went over to tried to go to the toilet. I couldn't sit on the toilet. I started screaming when I went to sit on the toilet. So they brought me back, and you guys have to keep picturing that I'm walking around with my legs really far apart. So I'm like walking like so strange back over to the bed. And I had ripped all the stuff off of me to try to go to the bathroom. And so the nurse comes back in, and she's like, wait, why did you take everything off? And I was like, because I had to go to the bathroom. And she's like, well, just unplug it. And so then she has to reposition everything, put all the stuff back on me. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, where's Goldberg? It's been more than an hour. And I really started to feel like I was gonna like have to push or something. And then I started to burp. This is when the burping came in. So felt really intense feelings, and then I would let out these massive dino burps. If you listen to episode 1, this is what I was talking about. And then I took the biggest poo on the floor. Sorry, everyone, but I did. I hate talking about that, but it's true. It came out. Everyone in the room's cheering. Not really. It's like Sonya's cheering, the nurse cheering, like, oh, that means, this is
Great.
really, we're there, And so the nurse goes to check me. The midwife, she's like a midwife nurse or something, and she comes in because Goldberg is not back yet, and she goes to check me, and she's like, "Oh, you're almost there. You're like 9 something," and I was like, "The lip. I know it. It's the lip. This is why I feel like I have to push so bad. I need him here." And I was like, "Tell him to get in here." And they were like, "Well, he's finishing up something over there." And I was like, "Tell him to come over here now." And they're like, "It's okay. We'll bring a midwife in." The midwife comes
No.
in from the floor, and Eric was like, nobody else in here right now. And the midwife was like, "Well, I'm here because she needs to push." And Eric was like, she doesn't want anybody else in here right now. And then this woman, I feel like I think she was a nurse. Maybe it was one of the midwives. I can't really remember because my face was kind of in the bed. There was a woman's voice who said, "We need you to get up on the bed." And I just started to moan really loud and was pushing. And I can't get in the bed. And she was like, "We're going to lift you up onto the bed." And I was like, "No." And she kept talking, and I just started shushing her. And I just telling her to be quiet because she was so loud. And also, I was not going to do what she wanted me to do because I could not put my legs together. I couldn't move so now my legs are planted in this super wide split, and I'm holding on to the side of the bed. And I'm going to tell you that from this moment until the end, I do not move. I don't move out of this position. My legs are split open. I go down into like this open split squat thing. and then I would come back up again. So Goldberg comes in and he's like, whoa, she's ready to go. I can hear her from all the way out in the hallway, down the hall from the other place that I was. And he was like, Sarah, take some of that energy and put it down into your body as you start to push. And I'm gonna go ahead and move the he's like putting his hand up there to move the lip to the side and help the baby get down. So, and I was like ready, I knew it was going to be intense, but I was ready for him to get there because I knew that's what my body needed. And so I was very much in my vocal outer, like I was projecting a lot of noise at this point. And so then he reminded me again, okay, let's bring that back down into your body. Let's use that energy, but let's not make so much noise because you're pushing a lot of energy out of the top and not the bottom. And I was like, okay, so I grab onto the rails of the bed and I start to bear down as he's like, he's guiding me through the whole thing. This is why he's like such an amazing birthing partner for me, is because through the whole thing, he's telling me, okay, where the baby's head is and where his hand is. And I've got one finger out. Okay, now I've got two fingers out, like telling me that that where the progression is because I can't feel it because the pressure is so intense. And so I start pushing Winter down. But when I do that, I'm in this massive squat and my feet rise up and I'm sort of like my thighs are resting on a nurse on my right, Eric on my left, and Goldberg's got his hand up inside me behind me, right? So then there's like a couple other nurses and Sonia's videoing. She's got my kids. Oh my gosh, she's got my kids on FaceTime. My son is in the middle of PE. And so he's jumping jacking in the background while the baby's coming down. And Esme's yelling, "Good job, mommy."
Yeah, I
And
remember seeing
so,
that. It was so cute.
oh, so cute. And then Goldberg tells me like, "Okay, we see her. I see her face. I see the head. Here we go." And then he's like trying to get a clean glove because I keep pooping on his gloves and I'm in this weird position. And then the nurse keeps telling me that I need to get on the bed. This is the part I forgot. She keeps saying, you can't have the baby in that position because the baby's going to hit the floor. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to catch the baby or somebody's going to catch the baby, but that doesn't make any sense. The baby's not going to hit the floor. Someone's going to catch it. And I was like, so I'm definitely having the baby in this position because I can't physically move and no one's touching me. So then he's back there. He's holding everything, like he's like kind of pulling and helping with the shoulders and making sure. He yells out, "Shoulders are clear." He gets on a clean glove again. He's like, wait, 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 don't push, because he's trying to get his clean glove on. And because this is the moment, right? And so he's like, okay. And then he's like, take a deep breath. And he's like, all right, let's bear down together. And then I bear down. And then the baby comes out. And Eric's like, yeah. And then Esme, she's like, good job, mama. And I throw myself onto the bed and I go, oh my God, thank God. That was the very first words that I said.
I know. That's my
like,
favorite.
Oh. It was wild. And I tell that story with so much energy because it was just so fast. Everything happened really fast. And, I got to the hospital. I don't remember what time it was, but within 2 hours, the baby was out, right? So
Oh my goodness.
everything happened really quickly. Eric showed up in time, but like the energy of this birth was so different than my other births. And it was not this like dreamy romantic thing. It was like jackhammers. Yeah, exactly. I had that birth. This was like jackhammers and morning school and it's COVID and
Jumping jacks.
jumping jacks. It's just like that's what this birth is. So, but it was amazing. And I have this incredible video and I'm so grateful for it because since losing Goldberg, I've gone back a million times to look at these videos of him and just like weeping with so much love and admiration for who he is and what he's done for me in my life and like the gift that he gave to so many human beings. But sitting there watching it back and me looking at him and saying, that was so hard. And I'm like looking at him as this figure of like, I don't have a dad anymore. And like, he's not old enough to be my dad, but I'm looking at him like that. He's like someone who's brought me through this process and
That
coached
paternal
me. Yes,
energy.
that paternal way, like coached me the whole way. He was so loving. He was like rubbing my head at the end and he was like, "You did it, Mama. Wow." He was like, "I'm so proud." And he was just like, it's just wonderful. So the experience
Mm.
was absolutely wackadoodle, but it was really amazing. And
How
then
memorable.
so memorable. And that's birthing in 2020.
Oh my goodness. And how was that following hour after the birth? What did that feel like?
It was just magic. I was just like calling, everyone and my mom and, just my kids and holding this baby. It was like already, I got her nursing right away and I just couldn't stop staring at her. She was just so beautiful. And I always get really cold after I give birth for some reason. And I shake it really hard. And so that part's always kind of jarring for me because I'm like, am I okay? Am I gonna die? Am I losing blood? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm fine. It's just like an adrenaline. I think it's like a come
I
down from
do
the
that too.
adrenaline. And
I
I
see my
shake
whole
really
body like,
hard. So
ooh.
yeah, it's so weird. But I was hungry, so Sonia had food for me. She was like giving me miso soup and crackers and all this really nice
No.
stuff. And here I am sitting in this like little box of a room with my brand new baby and there's not a window in sight and I couldn't care less. And it was just magical. And I was so
Heaven.
glad that I was the one who got that room because
Yeah.
it didn't matter. I didn't care. It was just
Mm.
great. And I was just happy to have a healthy baby in my arms. And I loved the experience so much. And yeah, it was great. And then we were transitioned to the postpartum area and they got us out so fast because of COVID. I went home
Yeah.
that night, which was
Yeah.
nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. So,
What an incredible story. I
uh,
love it.
thanks.
But it just goes to show how different all of these births are, even though she's your third
Yeah,
baby, you've done this two previous times, but all the stories are just wildly different.
I know. Really
Goodness.
is. It's amazing and so fun to tell and so fun for all of you guys to send us and tell us about your birth stories. We've been reading some of them as well and it's just amazing. It's my favorite thing because every single story is different and unique to each mother and also to each baby that you have, which is also
Mhm.
just incredible. So yeah, thank you
Thanks,
for
guys.
listening. We love these birth stories and we can't wait to come back and tell Teresa's fourth birth story.
Yeah, we will do that. We'll talk about home birth and all the many ways in which you can prepare for a home birth.
All right, you guys can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Mother Days. It helps so much when you rate, review, listen, subscribe, share it with your friends. If you love this episode, please tell us. We would love to hear it. And we would also love to hear your birth stories. So send them to us at themotherdays@gmail.com. We will have a really special listener episode where we talk about your birth stories and we can read some of them. That will be so great. So
Thanks,
thank you everyone for
guys. Thanks,
joining.
Daisy.
Bye.